Hey everybody, it's me, Untitled Viking. I'm here to talk to you about this quick little fun dice game called Gangster Dice. This is a game where each person is going to be taking the role of a classic 1920s gangster, and they are going to be rolling this set of dice that they have. They get 6 dice, and by influencing different locations by the dice rolls and by putting bids in for in addition to the dice that they roll, they will then take control of those areas and then enact special powers that will allow them to change dice and move them around, because the goal of this game to win is to get rid of all of the dice that you have and get them out onto the card so you have no dice in front of you, and the first person to do that will win the game. It's a little bit different because usually when you're rolling dice, you're trying to collect more or use the dice to get points, but in this situation, you're just rolling the dice to get rid of them, which is kind of neat, and it's kind of tricky, and it's a lot of fun to do as well. So it sounds more difficult than it is. Let me show you how to play the game, which shouldn't take very long at all, and then we'll come back here and I'll tell you exactly what I think of it. Alright, awesome. Let's do this. Alright, this is Gangster Dice, and this is the prototype that was sent to me, so keep that in mind as I show you how to play the game, as this may or may not represent the final look of the game once it is published. This is a dice game, as you can probably guess from the name of Gangster Dice. So you have a blue, red, and white dice, and on the 6 sides of the dice there are there are 4 different symbols. There is this finger. And there's 2 of those, and there's 2 of those on every single one of the die. And then there is a gavel, which is that, a martini glass, which is that, and a gun, which is that. Now, those 3 symbols, you're rolling these dice to influence these cards and take control of those cards and do special powers. And as you can probably guess, there's a gavel here, a gun there, and a martini glass there. The blue dice have more martini glasses, these have more guns, and these have more gavels. So you can kind of keep that in mind when you're rolling these dice, when the chances of getting that symbol when you roll them will be increased, obviously. So there are these, each player, I should say, will get this deck of cards. This is the influence deck. They each have one for the exact same cards that are up there, and then the different powers that happen when you use them. I'll go over that in just a brief moment. And finally, there are these player cards, and so then they have the name of a person, tells them their special power on the front, and on the back of them it kind of just tells you goes into more detail as far as what their special power is, and then also tells you the starting favor cards that you get at the beginning of the game. So like, Eddie Vandenberg Jr., the senator's son, gets 5 favors, and he starts with one of the big +4 favors there, so he has, because he's the senator's son, whereas Lucky Liza Bruno, the con artist, has a rather lengthy but powerful ability about having not even to reveal her cards and so forth, but only gets 2 favors. So the more favors you have, the better off you're probably going to be, due to the fact that the favors will be added to the die roll to determine how much influence you're putting on that particular card when you're trying to take it over. And so then these have these different values on them, 1, 0, 3, and so on and so forth, like that. So the game is played really simply. Each person is going to start with 2 dice of each color, and on their turn, and everybody rolls the dice at the exact same time. So I'm just going to roll these dice here, like so. And so I'm going to just match them up. So I have a gavel. I have 2 gavels, a martini glass, and 2 guns, and one of these the pointed fingers, or like the investigator. Like the finger is supposed to be like they're pointing you out because you're the one that is the bad guy, or you're corrupt, or what have you. You're part of the mob. And so then what happens is that, starting with your favorite cards, let's say we started with 3 favorite cards. Then you look in here, and like we have a 3, a 1, and a 1. So we can go, we have those, and we're going to take 1. So we take our +3, and we want to maybe take over the streets. So we're going to use that, and what we're going to do is, for our card, is that we find the streets card like so. So we have a streets and the +3, and then we put that face down in front of us, and then everybody will reveal both these cards at the same time. We're influencing the gun, the streets, and note you have to have that symbol. You can't, like if I hadn't rolled any guns, I couldn't use this card. You have to make sure that it represented. But so we match it. We have 2 and 3, and so we've got 5, and we're trying to influence the streets with those 5 points. And then you after. Regardless of what happens, I'll show you what happens with the bid here. You discard this, and then you will draw another one at the end of the turn, and put that back into your hand. Now, and then you put this card back into your hand after the fact. So then you go through each person that's playing, and you determine who has like the most points and who gains the influence of the card. If you tie somebody, unless there's a rule that, you know, like on the character or the streets allows you to break ties. If you tie somebody, then the spot just has nobody influencing it, and nothing happens. And so that's that. Now, as I said, the point of this game is you're trying to get rid of all of your dice, and which, you know, is kind of difficult because you need to roll dice and get good dice rolls to be able to get rid of them. But if you get rid of your dice, then you're not going to have dice to get good dice rolls. So you know where I'm going with this. But when you take these things over, you get to enact certain powers. Now, the first time that you gain control over a spot, you'll just put it in front of you. Like if you gain control of the streets, you put it in front of you. There is an exception with the investigator. I'll explain that in just a little bit. You'll put it in front of you, but you don't get to do anything with it until you win it a second time. If you're controlling it, you have it in front of you, and you win the same thing again, then you get to do the power of the location. So, just going through each one. If you win the control of the speakeasy, and then the next turn you win it again, you're allowed to, and it starts with these 3 dice on top of it, the speakeasy does, you're allowed to swap out any 3 of your dice, up to 3, for any 3 dice on the speakeasy. Now, you might be saying, well, why would I do that? Well, if you want to go with like a heavy, you know, red strategy, you could swap out, you know, there's a red one, you could swap out maybe one of your white dice, you know, like, so, okay, I'm going to give you this, and I'm going to take that back, and now I got 3 red dice. And so you have those to roll instead, so you can get more. And that's, but obviously then those are the dice that are on there. So then the next person goes, they could say, well, I want to have, you know, I want to have the lawyer. So I'm going to, you know, take these 2 and I'm going to replace it. And so the dice and the color of dice are going to switch around on the speakeasy quite a bit. Now the streets, once you control it, you can take, you don't have to, you can take one of your dice and put it on top of the streets and place it on there. Now, as I said, if you own the streets, it does break ties. So if you win a bid and you have the streets, you will break that tie and be the winner technically of that round. The other thing that the streets does is when you control the streets, the number of dice on it, not the dice what on the dice, but the number of dice add to your bid. So like you have that extra power, if you will. So this would give you +1 to your bid when you have it. Now, the dice don't ever really come off of the streets. So if somebody else wins it, and there's like 3 dice on there that you've put on there, every turn you put in a die on there, then they're going to get that extra muscle, that extra bid when they take and control that. You know, and they're going to have that in front of them. So something you obviously getting rid of dice is important because you win the game that way, but the process, like, you know, you might not want to always have the die in there because if somebody takes it and there's like 4 or 5 dice on there, it becomes a pretty powerful ability for them. The lawyer, when you win that, you have it under control, you get to take, instead of drawing a random thing, you can take one of these nice big +4 favor. And then when you play it, you put it back in the stack. You don't put it in the discard pile. And so every time you keep control of the lawyer, you're always going to have that +4 favor, and that's obviously really good because, you know, you can't get a +4 out of the deck. Also, as long as you're controlling the lawyer, you can't be forced to take a die unless you want to from the investigator. Now, the investigator is the one thing that when you influence the investigator and you control it, you will hand it to the person on your left. Now, this might be a little confusing. So, just let's say this player over here had it and they control it and they influence it, and then they hand it to me. So now the investigator. So now basically, thematically, the investigator is now like investigating me as you know, as far as being a mobster or what have you. So I've got this card in front of me. So when you have the investigator in front of you at the end of the round, you have to take a die that is on that card. And right now there aren't any dice on there. But here's the deal. If you win the bid for the investigator, but you don't have it in front of you, meaning that it isn't controlled by you, because remember, this is the one card that you don't put in front of you if you win the bid. So if this has gone and moved to this player because of the fact that the person that had it in front of them prior, this one, won the bid for it, they're allowed then to put all of one color of die. So you're like, so if you have like 2 blue dice, they can just put their 2 blue dice on top of it, and then when it gets to the next person, they have to take one of those dice off of that. So that's where like kind of some of the combination comes. You go to the speakeasy to trade in one color of your dice to get another color, and then you hopefully take over the investigator. Remember, each one of these dice has 2 of the fingers on there, so there's no one die that like is perfect for influencing the investigator. You just have to. So if you control it, if you win the bid for it, and it's in front of somebody else, you're then able to get rid of all of those dice. And that's one of the really that's what people kind of shoot for to try to win the game. You're trying to combine the different actions and get that, and make sure that you are able to influence or gain control of the or win the bid for the investigator when you can dump all of your dice and then win the game. So that's, you know, and that's, and you know, that isn't the only way to win, because obviously you can get rid of your dice via the streets as well. And you do have to kind of get lucky, because people will try to, you know, if you're getting low on dice, it gets tougher to actually, you know, win bids and influence the different dice out there. So it does get a little tricky and a little bit difficult, but it is very satisfying, obviously, when you win. So there you go. I mean, the game isn't really all that difficult. You know, it's got the variable player powers that you can play with or not. That's totally up to you. We do, because it adds a lot to the game as far as the different characters that you can be. But it is just one of these classic, really quick and fun to play dice games that my gaming group takes to immediately whenever we crack these open. So, but let me tell you more about Gangster Dice in my conclusion. All right, there you go. That is Gangster Dice. Now, as I said, this is one of those games that when I was told about it, I knew that my gaming group would enjoy it, basically because we are a group of people that have a long-standing tradition of playing tons and tons of RPGs, and so we love rolling dice, and we love enacting powers and abilities when you roll those dice. And this is a game that hits on that note for me and for my gaming group. And I really enjoyed the whole idea that the game was all about just getting rid of your stuff. But you need the dice to be able to do what you need to do to get rid of the dice. So it's kind of this weird balancing act that you have to go through. And the fact is that it seems easy. Okay, I mean, you see the game and you're like, okay, the solvency is there. It's like, I need to use the speakeasy to exchange my dice to get different colored dice, so then I can focus on the lawyer or focus on the streets, and then I can get down to having just one color of die somehow. Or hopefully, you know, but you know, which is difficult, because once again, remember, you're relying on people to use the speakeasy to like give you the dice that you want and put them on there. But you know, nobody's going to say, "Oh, I see, you know, I see you've got like 4 red dice and you know and 2 blue dice. Well, I better put 2 red dice over in the speakeasy so you can take those." No, nobody's going to do that. I mean, because everything's open knowledge. But regardless, it seems like it'd be a very simple game. It's like, oh, I need to do this, so then I can have the possibility of then using the investigator this card, to dump all of my one-colored dice on that particular card and then win the game. But it isn't that simple, mostly because of the fact that everybody can see what you're doing, and everybody can see what you rolled, and they can see where your bid is going to be. And they're going to do their best to bid over you and try to control that. But then you can use that to your favor, once again, because this is a blind bid. They don't know exactly which cards you're going to be gunning for, which cards you're going to be trying to get. And once again, just as some other games I've recently played and reviewed, this is a game where I'm trying to outthink and outwit my opponents. And anytime you remove you remove, like, the mechanisms are there that are challenging enough, but then you add in the human element of me trying to figure out what you're doing and you're trying to figure out what I'm doing, that's when the game kind of opens itself up and it becomes more than just the game that has been put together. It is my intelligence and my gut feeling of what you're going to be doing that is going to tell me what I hopefully can figure out your plan is, or what direction you're going to go. So for all those reasons, and like I said, it's a very quick playing time, very easy and very quick to teach. I found myself greatly enjoying Gangster Dice, and if you like quick little dice games, I think you're going to love it too. So, if you have any questions about the game, please ask away. I will answer those to the best of my ability. As always, I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video, and until next time, this was me, the Undead Viking, telling you to have yourself one heck of an awesome day. Alright, bye-bye.